Okay, well, I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6:01. We have our minute taker, and we'll open the floor for public comment. Shauna on Zoom.
Hey everyone, this is Shauna from Bristol. I just wanted to make note of the fact that the last several months there have been no Zoom meetings uploaded for some of the committees, including the Finance and Facility Committee. For a number of months after each committee meeting, I was emailing Jen Bauer, CCing Neat TV, and asking for them to be uploaded because I feel like it's super helpful to be able to hear and listen to those committees, but that hasn't happened since I stopped doing that. Tonight, I feel like is a really important meeting about the budget, yet the last 2 months, the Finance and Facility minutes were not linked in the agenda. So really, we're kind of totally unaware. Unless we were able to actually go to the committee, then we have no idea what's going on. I think that it would be helpful if those were available for people. I still don't see them online or linked. It's a little bit difficult because I do have questions and there's not really any answers readily available. So I also wanted to just mention that it seems that there is still, I noticed that the resignation that's listed on today's agenda, it still shows that there's a lot of issues where teachers are feeling like they're not being supported. And that issue is still continuing. So I just hope that there can be some resolution for the teachers because we don't need to lose any more good teachers. That's all.
Thank you, Shauna. Any other public comment? Yeah, Sarah?
It's a question, and I know this is not a Q&A kind of a format, so I guess I'll just put the question out there and maybe it'll become clear as tonight goes on. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Thank you. Sarah Mancini. I printed the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget presentation, and I had one question that might get explained later on, but there's one of the assumptions that says takes advantage of attrition from board action 128.25. And as that's today's date, I'm curious what that board action might be. If it's a simple clarification, I'd love to hear it, or I guess we'll find out as tonight goes on. Because attrition, of course, even if it doesn't involve RIFs, it does affect people's workload, and it affects the course offerings for students as well, especially at the middle and high school. So that was my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Jamie?
Sure. Jamie Schulte, Moncton, parent of a senior at Mount Abe. Just wanted to make a comment, and I was at the last meeting. Can't stay too long tonight, but option 1.5 sounded okay to me. If that's still something on the table, it's probably been some water under the bridge since last month. But just a comment about the specials and the importance of some of the things that are a little more peripheral to the curriculum. I think the specials are just that for some students. I know my daughter in particular has really connected with the music program, both at MCS, but particularly at the high school. And the quality of that program is really high, and it makes a difference in the experience of many students at Mount Abe. So I think some of those things allow students to find something in high school that they appreciate initially when they come in to middle school or high, and that lets them kind of branch out into some of the other areas that maybe they were struggling with. So just encourage keeping that in mind, and the importance of the specials may be larger than they seem, and be some of the things that stay with students long term that help them stay connected to their high school experience when a more core class has been long forgotten. So that's just wanted to comment on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Any other public comment? Okay. So we'll move down then to our consent agenda. Oh, sorry, first, an action item to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Kathy first. Second. Alyssa, second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now we'll move to the consent agenda. Can I please get a motion? Meredith,
Second.
second by Kristen. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we're gonna move into the executive limitations monitoring, and the first thing we have is a discussion, and we have the presentation for the Hannaford Career Center. Yeah, that's our first thing up.
Wonderful. My name is Nicole McTavish. I'm the superintendent and director at the Hannaford Career Center, otherwise known as the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District. I've also brought our director of operations, David Roberts, who's going to do part of the presentation today, and our new business director, Austin Haynes, who some of you may know from previous. He was at the center and then went off into the nonprofit world, and then we were lucky enough to get him on. And I have two board members with me, Kim Barnum and Judd. Judd's here, excuse me, is also here today to support these efforts. And then we also have our new Liz, who is now sitting on our board as well as your board. So she's doing double duty on board duty. So thank you very much for coming and joining our board. All right, so this is the fiscal year 26 proposed budget. And I generally like to start just because I never know who's in the audience and what you already know about the Hannaford Career Center. And often we have board turnover between one year to the next. So I usually start with just a little bit of an overview of what we do. So,
Shall I share my screen and I'll pull up your presentation?
yeah,
Does that
that'd be
help?
great, please. And I think this was in your board packet ahead of time too, hopefully.
And if you don't want to stand, you can sit with us. It depends, it's however you feel
Okay,
comfortable.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Can the people on the screen see me okay if I'm here, or is it
Yeah,
better if I sit?
this is a
Okay, yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
So the Hannaford Career Center was founded in 1971. And currently we have actually three campuses. So we have the main campus, which many of you know, which is contiguous with Middlebury Union High School. Then we have another campus, which we call our North Campus, which is at the north end of town, off Manelli Road, which is where we have our diesel program, our auto program, and our agriculture program. And then we also have what we call a satellite program, where we have two of our teachers embedded in Virgin's High School. Bill and Carl are up there and they teach CAD and business and some agriculture courses for us. So we serve right now all of the students in Addison County. So at any given time, we hope we have over 300 students on the campus. Right now, we have 347 students on campus that we're serving. And we're a half-day program. So students come to us half the day, and then they are in their high schools half the day, unless they're a freshman or a sophomore, in which case they're half a day every other day, and then all the rest of the time at their home school. So in our 9th and our 10th graders, they take what are called pre-technical classes, which are essentially teeing them up so that hopefully they go into a technical field and take a technical class with us. And then we serve 11th and 12th grade students in what we call our technical programs, where they actually earn college credits and industry certifications. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also do adult programming. So in the evenings and on the weekends, we have adults from any place in Vermont, but generally from Addison County. And we do classes that help people earn certifications in their current workplace, or maybe change career paths or get a leg up in their current career. So we have lots of industry-wide partners. Part of the work of career technical education is to make sure that our students are working directly with the industry so that they can get the actual real world experience and then hopefully choose one of the career pathways that they're exploring. And then we have lots of alumni who we try to, if you follow our social media at all, we've been trying to do a alumni highlight every week, which is really fun, finding them and seeing what they're doing. There's some pretty impressive kids young adults out there now. So the mantra for career technical education is that we are preparing students for high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. So any of our programs have to meet those three criteria: high wage, high skill, high demand. And so many of you have in front of you, the McClure Foundation helps the state of Vermont each year by this is the annual report that they put out. It just came out a couple of weeks ago about all of what are the most high wage, high needs jobs in Vermont. So the pre-technical programs that we have, those are the ones that are for the 9th and 10th grade. So we have CAD, agriculture, STEM, mechanical science, small business, and visual communication. And 9th and 10th grade generally take those courses. Then for the technical programs, these are open to any 11th and 12th grader, and then also 10th graders who are on track to graduate and are mature enough to follow the safety protocols. So right now we have, I think, 19 programs. So everything from ART, which is their theater program, manufacturing, apparel and design is a new program we're starting next year. Automotive, construction, culinary, design and illustration, diesel, human services, which is both preschool and now we're moving into training teachers. And then medical professions, natural resource management, sustainable ag, and brand new this year was welding. So we're really excited about those programs, and our welding program is doing really well. In fact, we're really proud of the fact that half of the students in that class are girls. So we're really trying to break that glass ceiling in the welding world for those kids. So one of the things that the sending school boards really want to know is if you're sharing students with us, are they doing well, right? Are we helping you with your goals for graduation? So for us, all of Vermont students, you've probably looked at this with your own data, are graduating at about 83%. All CTE students in the state of Vermont are graduating at about 95%. And the students that you're sending to us, they're graduating at 99%. And the way that's calculated for CTE is if a student takes any of our courses in either their junior or their senior year, we track them when they're a senior to see if they're graduate. So even if they were a junior with us and they weren't a senior with us, they still count in our denominator for graduation. So for the last year, so this is always lagging by 1 year, the students that we had as either juniors or seniors graduated at 99%. We only lost one. Also, big CTE, so national CTE and Vermont CTE track wages over time with students that took CTE programs. And we know that students that take CTE programs earn better wages over time. So what do kids get if they take a course with us? Well, of course, they get super engaging and amazing courses, but they also get things that they get to take with them after they leave us. So 100% of our classes offer students tier 2 industry certifications. That means that if a student is in one of our technical courses, so those junior or senior classes, they're taking the same exams, the same exact certifications as industry professionals. So if they're taking an auto ACE certification, it's the same one that somebody working in the industry takes. Or if our students earn their LNA, for example. So whatever industry the student is in, they earn the same exact industry credentials. And then they get to do that for free and take those with them as they exit into the workforce. Right now, we have 50% of our classes that also offer free college credit for students, and that's up from 35% only 1 year ago. So we're really working hard on getting this number up higher and higher over time. We're really proud of this. It's a lot of work to get those cross-curricular agreements with community colleges. So we're really excited about this. And then about 1/3 of our kids also take advantage of what's called co-op or workplace-based learning, where they work in our center part of the time, and then they go out and actually work like at County Tire or in an agriculture environment for part of the time too. Oftentimes it's interesting for you all to see kind of where you shake out, where your kids shake out with how many students are attending or what percentage of students are attending. So for us right now, in all of Addison County, there are 539 through 12th graders. In ACSD, there are 538 9th through 12th graders. And for them, at Middlebury, 30% of those kids are taking at least one Hannaford Career Center class. At Mount Abe, you've got 404 and 21% are taking a class here. And then at Addison Northwest, they've got 257 and 40% are. That satellite program, one of the reasons that we're able to continue doing it is because that is improving the students' access to CTE. So that is something that we're watching closely. As budgets get tight, you have to watch your data and make sure we can continue with having these programs, right? So over time, the other thing that we really work very hard on is serving all students. When you have a 2% or less unemployment rate in your county or in your state, that means that every single person graduating really it's important that they have a place in the economy, that they can find a job, that they can do work, and both help themselves and also help us all. So a year and a half ago, when we sat down and we revamped our admissions process, you probably, hopefully noticed that more and more kids are being accepted into the Hannaford Career Center. We've really taken a pretty strong stand that CTE is a civil right and that students should have access to our programming. There are a few exceptions to that. If a student can't follow a safety rule, that's really the bottom line, because many of the things are quite dangerous, right? So if a student can't be safe, then that's not going to work. But other than that, we work really hard to provide accommodations so students can access our programs. So when you look at all of the sending schools, so Middlebury and Virgins and Mount Abe, just an average across those three, we didn't want to call anybody out, but across the three schools, about 22% of students have an IEP, an individual education plan, or a 504 plan. At our population, 34% of our kids have either an IEP or a 504. So about 1 in 3 of our students are disabled in some way, and we are supporting them with accommodations at the center. This data comes from what you've got in front of you, which is the McClure Foundation work that they do with the Department of Labor. And these are the top called out jobs in Addison County and largely in Vermont. And you can see that each one of these programs we provide at the Hannaford Center. So what Vermont needs is exactly what we're offering. So we're hopeful that we will be making a big difference in allowing kids to have stellar jobs and stay in our communities. We also like to let you know that we don't just ask for money. We work really hard to find it elsewhere. So we spend a lot of time, David, in fact, is our grant writer and spends quite a lot of time going after and accumulating grant funding through state sources, through philanthropies, and through federal sources. Over the last 18 months, we won $1 million in grant funding, which is a big deal when your budget's only $5.5 million. So we're working pretty hard to offset the costs of the education that we're providing. The other thing we do is provide those skill sets for adult learners in our community. So this is if you're already in a job, but you want to gain a new skill, or you want to earn a certificate so that you can get a higher wage, or maybe you want to change your career path. You're not thrilled with what you're doing. You want to look at something else. So for our adult education courses right now, our biggest sector is that we partner with Porter Medical. We really are working hard to create a pathway for students to go straight into the medical field, to be able to earn a wage that allows them to stay in their communities and to serve their community. So right now we're offering the LNA, the CMA, and the phlebotomy courses at our center. And the students walk out of there with their certificate, they can go right to work. We also offer welding, soldering, forklift, tractor safety, small engine. And then we also have an online program that many people don't know about. It's called Ed2Go, which has hundreds of courses in it. And then we also support the Makery, which is a kind of a grassroots maker space and opens up our woodworking shop and our sewing space for the community to come in. One thing that we have been seeing across the nation, it started with the pandemic, but it really is a shift in young people taking an interest in and going in much larger numbers into CTE post-secondary. Especially community college are seeing a huge rise in their enrollment in CTE programs, and technical institutes are seeing a big rise. Oregon Institute of Technology had their biggest freshman class ever this last year, and there were articles all over about this giant class that showed up of students wanting to take CTE. So CTE is having a moment. Students are really starting to evaluate high wage, high demand careers and what makes their heart sing and what's going to give them a living wage without being burdened with a ton of debt. So this is a trend that we hope continues. These are just some of the headlines we pulled out about this change, and the media is calling this the tool belt generation. So I don't know if that will stick, but it certainly is showing up in a lot of places. And And then our local grads, you know, we really try to champion them and show that the work that they did learning from the Career Center, from their spectacular professionals that are teaching them and earning their industry credentials really does make a difference in our communities. These are just a few of the organizations which are led by Hannaford graduates. So if you go to any of these businesses, you know that you're interacting with somebody who got their first taste of that industry at the Hannaford Career Center. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to talk the numbers. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm David Roberts. I'm Director of Operations. Been working at the Career Center on and off for about 5 years now. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about the budget. What you're seeing there is the 2025 budget, which is the current year. We were at 4.279 million. I'm sorry, 5.278 million. We are proposing an 8.04% increase, which brings us up to 5.704. And the next slide will kind of give that breakdown. So I'll just pause here. Obviously, if you look at the blue, the orange, and the green, about 85% of our budget is wages, benefits, and debt service. As you know, we did a big renovation at the Career Center to repair a lot of the systems in the last couple of years. So we have a brand new bond of about 8 million. This represents some cuts in TA and some consolidation and moving around of roles and responsibilities. But it does not cut programs, any of the programs. One of the things that we have really are fighting for is not to get caught in the spiral of cutting programs to save the budget. Because once you start cutting programs, it reduces your enrollment, which reduces our 6-semester weighted average, which increases tuition. So we are really trying to hold on to the programs that we have and develop those and grow those. We have some exciting new programs, and especially advanced manufacturing. We received a $550,000 grant from Senator Leahy through the congressional directed spending, and that has funded a brand new lab with about $300,000 of brand new equipment, CNC equipment, and 3D printers. We now have a drone club, which if your students are not in tune with, we put one thing out and 25 students showed up. They just went to a competition last weekend, and I think that's pretty impressive for just kind of getting something going on the bootstraps. New 3D printers, a CNC wood router and mills and those kind of things. So it's a pretty powerful thing to walk in and see these students really engaged. And it is the future of tech, of a CTE, where we're blending the old manufacturing world with the computer world, and they're kind of blending, and it takes a special skill. And we're really trying to work hard to get those students interested in the Career Center. And I think, you know, seeing drones and that kind of stuff is, and 3D printers is a good way of doing that. I see a question.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you tell me your name again?
David Roberts.
And did I get this correct, that the budget shows an 8.04% increase
Yes,
and 85% reflects wages, benefits, and debt service?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Part of the increase, obviously, we had a 9% increase in faculty salaries. It was 6% last year. It was 9%. Sorry, it was 6% this year, 9% in FY26, and it'll be 6% in FY27. We expect the same with the TA contract, the teaching assistant, the staff contract, which is being negotiated now. And we had 11.9% increase in health benefits. So those are pretty much the drivers. So for it to be such a large portion of our budget and for us to come in under that, I think it was represents kind of a bare bones budget for us without cutting programs. Next slide. We also, part of the contribution of our tuition is from the state. It's called the base rate. If you guys are familiar with that, This year is the first year that we know in the last 10 years that it's actually decreased. It decreased by like around 3%. So that was a surprising number for us, but it also just feeds in. It doesn't feed into the budget, but it feeds into tuition. The next slide talks about the tuition. So it's broken down to the state, the portion that comes from the state and the portion that comes from the school. The base rate, which is the first column, it shows the decrease of the 87%. So just a little technical, the base rate is the bottom line, the 12,668. We get 87% of that. So that's kind of where the numbers are coming from. Last year it was $13,063. This year it's $12,000. So that represents a 9.34% increase in the overall tuition rate. As I mentioned, the primary budget for the drivers of the budget increase with state's base rate decreasing by 3%, 9% union negotiated salary, 11.9% health insurance. We have a very seasoned staff. I think one of if you guys know what the STEP system is, we have a lot of teachers that are at the very end of that step process. So you know, our staff is expensive, as it should be, because we're highly, as you guys all know, we're highly technical and with lots of training. And then health insurance and our health, our insurance premiums also increased. The next slide just shows the budget and the difference. Going from $5,279,000 to $5,704,000, which represents a $424,000 increase, which is the 8.04. And the last slide just shows a little bit of the slice of what the Career Center is in Addison County. The total budget for Addison County schools is $123 million. At 5.7% budget, we're at a 4.45% percentage of the entire school budget of Addison County. So I think we are obviously, you know, our tuition is high, we know that, but we are also an expensive school to run with all the equipment and the labs, but we're also a good bang for our buck. And relatively speaking, a small portion of the Addison County spending education dollars. I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions.
Can I just ask one, can you explain a little bit the driver on the benefits line and that 30% change year over year in the expenditure?
For staff benefits?
I'm not sure what's in that benefit line. It's going from 900,000 to 1.2 million. It's a 35% increase.
Right.
And we certainly understand benefits increasing. There's gotta be something else in there.
Yes.
Other than medical insurance that's driving that number.
Well, most of what it is we have, because our budget is small, money moves our percentages pretty quickly. So what we see is if a teacher doesn't take health insurance, we save $32,072.
Oh, we get that.
Right? So, we have 4 new teachers this year. We'll have 4 new teachers for this year. We are budgeting for them to take a family plan, which is $32,000. We've also had 2 or 3 teachers who went from not taking the plan to the plan. So it is just a matter of the logistics of who decides to take our health insurance or not. And, it can add up quickly.
When the N is really small, it makes a big difference. And we don't want to discourage anyone from taking it. It just, we have to budget for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kudos for your successes.
Thank you.
We love sharing kids with you.
I will say one thing is the best way to make our tuition go down is to send more students to us.
That was my question. I'm wondering, like, when you're first starting the outreach in all the districts, at what age are you're talking to kiddos?
We
I
do,
was
yeah,
wondering.
so when the board hired me, one of their big things was you gotta get out there, right? You need to increase our recruitment efforts. So we do visitations for 8th, 9th, and 10th graders. We have all those kids that come to our campus. At the 9th and 10th grade level, it's kind of up to the sending school. Some students have already said they don't want to come, so they don't send them, but generally, most kids come for a visit. We also do our open houses. We do so much social media now. I hope you've seen it on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. I don't have Instagram, so I don't get to see it, but I see it on the others. We're doing direct mailings to every family in Addison County, whether or not they have kids. You'll all get a postcard. And then we also do, as soon as registration starts opening up, we'll do another direct mailer. We're targeting the homeschool community right now too, because I think a lot of homeschoolers had a mixed review with welcoming to the center previously. And so now we're really trying to lay out the welcome mat, because those students have much more flexible schedules than many students. And we're hoping that that might be a really good way to invite people in. And then we really lean on our alumni. We've spent a lot of time talking to our alumni and championing our alumni so that people know people who have gone and then been really successful. We see that kind of draw is really very powerful. And strangely enough, the other place that we get a lot of traction from is the Addison Independent. Our community reads that paper. So we get more hires from that paper than all the national advertising that we do combined. Because somebody saw it who knew somebody who had a daughter somewhere who knew a guy and then he applied, right, kind of thing. So we spend quite a lot of our time and energy on recruitment efforts. And then I think that you will see, you will probably hear from your administrators that now as the actual registration process is happening too, far more students are being accepted than previous. And so that I hope will also make a difference. We also were working very hard to partner with the sending schools so that all the students that are accepted, that we can make strong accommodations and supports for as they come to the center, right? Because we all need them to enter the workforce. Yes.
Seems like proximity also plays a big role in terms of getting students to you, whether it's the center right next to the school in Middlebury or the satellite classes at Virgins. I mean, just looking at the percentages, it feels like we're not pulling our weight in terms of students. I wonder maybe a little bit about how that partnership with Virgins as a satellite location came about, and whether that's something that you're interested in exploring more broadly, if that's something that could introduce more students to this kind of programming in a way that's a little bit more tractable, because they're not on a bus to Middlebury and then back.
Yeah, we've started talking about that, just, I mean, a little, not anything structural. One of the things that plays into that number is that Virgin still does offer some CTE-like classes, but they're not CTE classes, right? So we have to figure out that mix a little bit too, right? We certainly don't want to impact a community's lifelong love of a program or class. And also, right, CTE is where you get your industry certifications and your college credits. So we have to figure that piece out. But the Virgins thing was an experiment. So far it's working. For us, there's a bare minimum that AOE sets, the Agency of Education. We have to have 8 kids in a program for it to be considered viable. If there's not, then we have to do all kinds of stuff and write papers about how we're gonna fix it, and it's a big thing. So as long as our numbers stay at 8, we're good, right? So that's kind of the commitment that Virgins has made, is they're gonna work their tails off to help us get that 8 so we can keep that enrollment at those programs. If it falls below 8, then we would have to cut it for the following year. And so that's the conundrum.
As a Virgins alumni, I remember
Yeah.
there's a very strong culture there, has
Right.
been for years, of shop and small engine repair.
Yeah.
It's just a different, I think, approach to education in general for years.
Yeah.
Why you might draw more from Virgins and be able to have that satellite. I also want to just say that your numbers in welding are really impressive, that there's so many women in welding.
We are so excited because there's a ton of research about this, both in higher ed and in K-12, where if you can get a core of girls together, then they support each other and that they have much more longevity. So if you have sort of one girl in auto, there's oftentimes they don't last. But if you have 3 or 4 girls, they hold on to each other and it works really well. And that happens not just with gender, but also with ethnicity and culture. If you can get kids so they have a little support group, they have much more longevity in programming. Yeah, great.
Just a quick reminder, February sixth
Yes.
is our open house. We would love for you guys to come and walk through. It's a pretty exciting time and there's some good food and snacks from our culinary.
And the kids get to show off what they're doing. It's
Right.
really wonderful. So if you have the time, I think you'd love to see your kids and what they're doing. Yeah.
What time, February sixth?
4:30 to 6:30.
We're both like, oh. And our culinary kids, yeah, they put on quite a spread, so. Don't eat dinner.
My name is
Alright.
Kim Farnham, and I'm your community at large member from this board. And I haven't introduced myself until today, but I also am the chairman of that board. This great person here who we brought in to just revolutionize the school. Our culinary expert chef is Jill Heisinger. She's a graduate from here. Just to let you know that. Those are the type of community things that we're seeing. The other thing is our relationship with Porter Hospital. I also wear another hat. I'm the chairman of that board. But the clinicals in our LNA program and so on, they do at Porter Hospital. And as a result of that, when everybody went to the silo and had their budgets done and everything else, it was one thing that was highlighted in the Porter report was our relationship with the local community and also Middlebury College. So those are some things that we try and foster, whether it's grant writing, whatever it is, to try and get those community groups together, do things like that. So.
And you have a few students in our auto and diesel programs from Mount Abe, and they're incredibly successful. We get calls regularly to try to hire those kids. And we have several of them in co-ops that probably will lead to promising careers. So there's a lot of wonderful things going on with students.
And it's a nice place for alumni to come back and say, go there.
Yeah.
You know, and my own personal experience with my daughter, who went on to Drexel University and became a graphic designer. She's had 5 different jobs in the last 10 years because that's what they do. But anyway, she was kind of laid back at Mount Abe and like, I really want to look at something. And I said, come to open house. And I did it. And that program is just full. I mean, it's constantly full and Lisa Rader, who runs that program, is just so dynamic. And I think one of the pieces that I can share with you is when she went to Drexel freshman year, every program that she was introduced to for freshman year, she'd already seen it at the Career Center. She was miles ahead, and because she was industry ready, and her portfolio was there and so on. So I just say that step up for her was like magical. And she said, you know, people said, where did you learn this stuff? And she said, at the Career Center. So just share that with you. And she's been out since about 2013 or whatever, but it's everybody that she associates with that went to school there are still close friends, no matter what program they were in, because they were in a group together supporting each other. Anyway, thank you.
I hope the rest of your budget night is.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah. Now the third is fine. All right, next we have an update on our financial report. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to you.
Excited to get to
Any questions?
Whatever.
I don't have questions. This time I know everybody's waiting for me to chime in, so.
Anyone else for the financial report? No? Superintendent's report?
Say that I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, we'll move then to the audit. Take it away, Melissa.
Well, I didn't know if Floyd had a presentation, but my question, Floyd, was just, I realized that, how it was laid out in here with statement 100, now any changes to prior year have to be like visible on the statement. So I'm curious if you can just walk us through, and I don't know, materially, it's not huge, the 64,900 that's listed here as, error corrections, debt, fixed assets, and special revenue, and just a little bit more detail on what those are and how they came to light.
Thank you. Let me get in there. What page are you looking at so that we can bring everybody?
Yes, no, that's a great point. I am on page, yep, it starts on 9 or even 13. The change in net position it's listed in both places. Page 13 just gives a little bit more detail that it's debt, fixed asset, and special revenue fund balances.
In October, I would answer this faster. I'm sorry.
What? I can't believe this isn't fresh.
Rather than wing it, and I would be pulling it, I think I got it, but it'll be coming out of my thought. Let me respond in writing tomorrow to the board as a whole.
Okay, that sounds good.
It will be weedy if I try and do it right now.
That's fine. That was my one question, otherwise it looked like it was a clean audit.
Anyone else? Is there anything that you guys wanted to highlight, Patrick or Floyd, about the audit, or we kind of like speaks for itself?
No, I think as Melissa pointed out, it's a pretty clean audit. There's always something that we can learn from this that we can improve upon and grow, and we always look for that opportunity, but by and large, it's clean and I think a success.
Did the auditors have any management letter comments, like within controls or processes that they provided thoughts on areas to improve on?
The areas of improvement in the management letter were twofold. One, student activities under GASB 84, and the change in that has been 2 years in a row. We've had conversations about our cash receipt procedure. So for example, gate receipts for the basketball game and maybe a little bit slow getting into the bank. No issues with them with any malfeasance with the funds, just slow in following that GASB 84. And we corrected last year, very quickly after the audit brought this to light last year, but it was in January of last year. So this year, we still had everything that was done in the previous year prior to January. All that to say that we're anticipating student activities as a repeat comment to go away. And then the other issue, which is a hit or miss, right? It just depends on what invoices they pull. There will be times when we have a purchase order that wasn't entered until after the request for the funds, right? So let's say I'll use the great example of the water pipe bursting in the hallway. And we called Service Master at 8 o'clock at night to start that moving forward, and weren't able to put a purchase order in for a few days until we even had any idea what that cost might be and how to drive it. That would be an item that if pulled, when pulled, it creates a cash disbursement management letter item, meaning they let us know, hey, you need to tighten these controls up. Nobody disagrees. And there are times when a purchase order is not going to get pulled prior to needing something to happen. Those are the two items that we had in the management letter. That was the greatest concern that they had. One, the GASB 84 on the student activities account, which we're comfortable that we've fixed. And the second being, at times, there may be a purchase order that's out of sequence, nothing other than that, just a sequencing issue.
And I just want to acknowledge the student activities accounts. That has been years in the making. So to get to a point where we're sitting today, feeling really good about the handle we have on student activities accounts, when you think about all of the activities that happen primarily in this building, the number of people that have their hands in those activities, in running them, collecting funds and getting to the right place. So Floyd and Tammy and Devin as sort of the folks leading that charge to get that to a place. Like student activities accounts are like the bane of the existence of finance departments in every school district in the state. Like there's just so much happening there that's really great and hard to kind of get your arms around, and to be at a place where we feel good about having our arms around that is to be commended.
I'm gonna give you a little historical. 3 years ago, it wasn't an item in our audit. Right, so then it became a focus under GASB 84, because it's now a fiduciary responsibility of you all to make sure that these funds are controlled correctly. And that change from an auditing standards standpoint has been exciting across the whole country. And I would say that with the confidence that we have for this current year, we're probably well ahead of a lot of our cohorts in terms of how well. And the credit goes to Tammy and Devin in terms of just really dialing that down and creating procedures that are clean, that are workable, and allow for the flexibility, right? I mean, Devin's trying to write a check for a wrestling match tomorrow night and has to figure out all of the pieces and parts that make it so that it's compliant under GASB 84. He's done a spectacular job of making that happen. And we're just really pretty dang happy of where we are with that. I'll take all the credit, but it's really Devin.
Thank you. Great.
All right, we'll move on down to board management and governance then. And our first is an action item to adopt fiscal year 26 budget. So motion, please.
So moved.
Mike
I'll second it.
and Sarah seconds. So let's dig into it.
You need any more info? All right, let's walk through it. Okay. So again, just sort of going through what are the assumptions? I think that's what we're looking at here. See if I can get this to get out of the way. Apparently not. So hang on, I get too far ahead. So excess spending penalty, so nothing has really changed there. And in terms of where that spending penalty is set for the threshold, this is something you've seen several times and no changes to it. The tax calculation hasn't changed since we last saw this either, but I thought, as folks are seeing this for the first time, it's good to have this here again. Again, the real shift here is where the emphasis is placed on what's driving the tax rate. It doesn't actually change the end result. The ballot language has changed as well. And you've seen that now on the ballot and the warning that were drafted for you. And in terms of the assumptions, so the 11.9% increase that has stayed consistent, that is still what is being projected. We did have a change in our long-term weighted average daily membership. This has been, we like to be roller coastery in budget season, and especially toward the end. We had a different roller coaster last year. This year's roller coaster has been a little bit with the long-term weighted average daily membership. So this is down almost 32 students from what you saw in December. At one point, it was down 38 students. Then we thought it might have gone up by almost 500 students, which was confusing. And then when the dust settled and everything was verified, we landed down almost 32 from what you saw last time. That's about a $465,000 impact. So to hit the budget impact target that you set means we would have to cut 465,000 more just because of that drop in LTW ADM. And so the budget you see accounts for that, and I'll talk about where that came from. So we're not anywhere near the threshold for cost per pupil, so that's safe at this point. So there's no calculation for that in here, as there hasn't been in any of the presentations that you've seen. And again, lower revenue is the same that you've seen. We do have a second draft of CLAs that are in here, so that's an update from what you saw last time. That's been accounted for. The yield has not changed yet. I expect the yield will change. Given the governor's budget address today and talking about using one-time money to buy down the tax rate, presumably how that's going to materialize is the yield is going to have a positive change. And that positive change to the yield is what drives down the tax rate. How much, when, I couldn't tell you at this point. So presumably, given that, the tax projections that you'll see when we get to that are probably going to be even better than what we're projecting at this point in time. Floyd, we haven't connected on that because that's fairly fresh, but so you see it.
In the 11.9% we got yesterday, we received the finance FDR.
Yeah.
That's a hard number now.
Yep.
But that would be like a one-time shift, right? Buying down taxes. presumably.
Yes, that is a
So
one-time
it's
use
not
of
something we
funds.
can count on going forward, and so think about that accordingly for this budget.
And much like we've had conversations, right? So that's at the state level, using one-time funds to basically buy time to implement a plan to affect change to be more sustainable. And that's a strategic use of that fund, as opposed to we don't have a plan, we're not gonna enact a plan, but we're gonna use this one-time money anyway, and that just digs a bigger hole for next time around. So there's a plan at least for folks to be chewing on as we use that money to buy that time.
Of course, the plan is over several years, though, right?
Yep.
We're talking 27, 28 or the earlier, right?
Well, it's like
And that's pretty ambitious.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's why I said
very
the
early,
earliest.
yeah.
Right.
Yep. So it does leave that question, what about the years
The years
after next
between
year? Yep.
now and then.
Yep. I did hear the governor say today that we're pretty cash rich right now, so perhaps there's a plan to use more of that cash in future years.
That's the thing.
Oh, maybe they're setting a precedent.
Yeah, could be. And so to Sarah's point, this, as we had talked about at our last meeting, that whole notion of option 1.5 was there are no rifts, but there's attrition that we knew of at that point that we would take advantage of, and that we would be looking to take advantage of a new attrition that presented itself as time kind of moves forward here through the spring and into next year. You approved resignations tonight. One of those resignations is a classroom teaching position that we would be able to take advantage of to bring class sizes in specifically Starksboro at Robinson closer to where the class sizes are in the other schools in the district. So that's the attrition that is taken advantage of in here. And that's part of what helps to address the $465,000 impact of the drop in the LTW ADM. So this is still option 1.5, a little bit modified from what you saw last time. It does take advantage of attrition, as we talked about. 1.5, when we last spoke, added 400,000 back in for facilities. The conversation at the board table that time was maybe we shouldn't be doing that. That idea of not doing that was confirmed when we lost $465,000 in taxing capacity with a drop in LTW ADM. So that whole 400,000 comes out, plus the money from taking advantage of that attrition that we just talked about, and that accounted for all of that difference from the drop of LTW ADM and then a little bit more. And that's why you see between that and then the slight change to the CLAs that we talked about is why we were able to do a little better than the target that the board set. So we're looking at the board target was to have the most impacted town have a 0% tax rate increase. And this presentation at this point in time, knowing the yield is going to move, is about a 0.5% decrease in the most impacted town. So we're a little better than the target. This basically last time said 7 positions and no rifts. Now it says 8 positions and no rifts because of that additional position that I just talked about that we'd be taking advantage of. And then the other is from all those hundreds of lines. Nothing has changed since the last presentation you saw there, giving us a total of just about $1.5 million in reductions. So there's those 7 unfilled, that's exactly the same as what you saw last time, and then that 8th. Just wanted to separate that out because that's new. This is the same as you saw last time as well, sort of what accounts for that other 600,000 and change. The big buckets were special education, transportation, tuition to vocational schools, and tuition to private schools, and then a lot of other much smaller dollars that added up.
Patrick, what is the new proposal to do away with universal hot lunch to this district?
We haven't calculated that. It's a good question. It might be more of what does that do to families? Because if the universal meals goes away, then we would probably, barring further conversations and reason to do something else, we'd revert back to what we had been doing previously, which was a combination of, various revenue streams coming in, including parent payment for lunches and contributions from the general fund. We've been able we usually keep the general fund contributions flat for several years. And at some point, we just can't do that anymore. We have to make an adjustment. It ticks up to some level. And then we try to sustain that for several years. And so that's what we've seen from the general fund impact. But it's for what our food service cooperative provides in terms of quality and quantity. Historically, the general fund contribution has been relatively small for what it gets us for our students to help just make it all kind of work.
Part of that. Oh, sorry, sorry. I was just gonna say that something to know is that I was really happy to hear when I first joined was that we never deny a student food. You come in, you can get food and that's that. And if it means coming out of our budget, it comes out of our budget at the end of the year. So it was never, no one was ever denied food and never would be in our district. So.
Yeah.
Can I just jump on that a little bit? There are some districts that also don't deny food, but it's a peanut butter sandwich. The student gets lunch.
Yeah.
There's no peanut butter sandwich table.
And we just sort of account for that. And sometimes, and again, this is in the circumstances before the universal meals, right? Kathy and her team worked really hard to, pursue accounts receivable, if we want to think about it that way, people that aren't paying their lunch bills. And in the end, if that doesn't get paid, they're still getting fed, and that's a portion of the contribution that comes from the general fund to cover that expense.
I could be wrong about this, but the grant money for that universal food for all kids, we're required to make sure they have vegetables or something, right? In order to get the funding.
Floyd may know more of the details, but there are very specific definition of what a meal consists of, as opposed to a la carte.
That if we, right, the salad
You
bar.
can't.
That's a federal requirement, regardless of our.
Make sure.
It's
It
the
really encouraged my
CCF.
kid to eat green stuff on his plate, so I'm feeling really good.
Is it
about
translating at home? Is he
It
eating the green stuff at
absolutely
home?
is.
All right.
He doesn't pick out basil in my meals anymore, so I just think I saw the positive impact on something what seems small to some. It was a big deal. My kid wouldn't touch vegetables.
You just made Kathy Alexander's day. I hope
Yeah.
she's able to watch this
Share that,
report.
seriously, that's crazy. So I just was hoping that would mean we would have to roll something like that back.
No, we wouldn't do that. We couldn't get Kathy to do that.
Yeah.
If we wanted to.
So
Well, we
positive.
would just the funding, right?
And
To
there's the
give you a
funding.
sense of how strict this is,
thought
the
it was
audit that comes through with USDA
Okay.
will go through, and we had 9 meals that we charged that they took away because we had the wrong size portion container for the vegetable.
Instead of a
Right,
quarter
rather
cup,
than
they got a third of a
3.5
cup. Like, it's
ounces,
quite precise.
4 ounces, it was 3.5 ounces. I mean, truly, it was to that point. That's the level of, that's the standard we're held to.
I forget something, I don't remember the statistics, but I think I'm close in the 15,000 meals a month or something like that they deliver. The average portion was off by some fraction of a cup, or it's quite regulated.
So learn something new.
And the bookkeeping is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So these are looking at the enrollment projections. So this is, by school, then total for the district. The FY26 projections are updated as of last week. So this is, looking at new projections for incoming kindergarten classes and looking at students that are matriculating and what that does for our enrollment. And you can see that, the decline that we've been seeing continues. It's, more in some places, less in others, but overall it's a decline. And just again, worth noting that the way the weights work, when a portion of your decline, and perhaps a significant portion of your decline is at the secondary level, those students are weighted more heavily, and so the decrease is felt more in that decline. To some extent, so Beam and Bristol Moncton are sort of plateauing, like the decline we had seen has kind of stopped. It's probably premature to say they might be rising in any of those schools. When we're talking about just a few students, I think I call that plateauing more than any sort of market rise. Robinson is where we've been seeing, it had been Robinson and Lincoln where we had seen the steep decline. Obviously with Lincoln out now, Robinson, we're still seeing that decline continue. I don't think it's going to decline to zero. It's going to also plateau at some point. I think we're probably reaching somewhere where we're going to plateau. I think we're going to be in that low to mid 80 range and kind of hang there. Obviously, unless something changes in years to come, but I think that's where that may land. So pretty much where Beeman is, which is a change. Beeman has historically been quite a lot smaller than Robinson when you look back over the last 20 years or so. But they've really come in to be basically the same size schools. And that's sort of the adjustment. Like, I think that's, thinking about the classroom reduction at Robinson, it's always hard to have a reduction like that. And the reality is Robinson right now has 7 classrooms and Beeman has 5. So with the same number of students projected next year, it makes sense that we can work toward the same number of classrooms in the 2 schools. It will mean doing things differently. But it's hard to say why one school should have more than another school that has the same grade configuration, the same number of students, et cetera. There may be at times reasons for it. If there's a particular bubble of a high enrollment grade or a low enrollment grade, that can sometimes, drive some staffing decisions that may need to have a little bit more staff than you otherwise would. But barring that, there's not a great argument to say that one should have more than the other.
When obviously for next year for Robinson's, it means a pretty significant change from what it is this year to next year. What's the kind of the process to manage that transition?
Attrition really is the sort of the main idea, right?
Yeah,
So we're not
but
gonna.
within the school itself and within the district, and then also how do we communicate that to our constituents?
Yeah, so part of the change, so we added, I mentioned that sort of the conundrum sometimes with the bubble. Robinson this year had kind of a bubble in the 5-6, some high numbers where we needed to add 1.0 classroom teacher there. So Robinson historically had 6 teachers for a while. We added 1 this year because of that, not because their total enrollment in the school necessarily warranted it, but the bubble. So one of the 2 that we would reduce at Robinson is the one we added just for this year to address that grade 5-6 bubble. So if that one sort of comes off the table, which is easy to say, hard to feel because it feels like a loss, but that was intended to be just for a year anyway. That sunsets. And in addition to that, it's 1 more. The process is really looking at as we approach springtime. So we have a few more months, and really it's after the issuance of contracts when we have a sense of who's coming and who's going. Then we can really understand where are the shifts happening in all schools and how do we take advantage of attrition, and then look at what reassignment makes sense to meet the needs that exist in the school. So for example, the classroom teaching position that you authorized, accepted resignation of today is at Moncton. Moncton isn't looking at with their enrollment, they're going to need that position filled next year. If Robinson needs fewer, we'd be able to reassign from Robinson to Moncton. So there isn't someone losing a job, but their assignment would be different to meet a need somewhere else. Who knows what changes are going to happen at other schools in the district. And once we kind of know what the variables are, we can work with the staff, talk about what options exist. Is there anybody interested in a reassignment that makes sense, closer to home, whatever, and kind of work from there to see all those variables considered, what makes sense in how we reassign.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I guess my question is obviously the budget is a separate issue than from the enrollment issue.
Yep.
They're kind of parallel, I guess, but folks in Starksboro are gonna be voting on the budget in March, and they have this notion that the school is gonna be undertaking significant change. So I guess the question is, how do we address that as a board to make sure we don't have some sort of, mini uprising in Starksboro?
I mean, I think class size tells a compelling story. I mean, that's,
No, you're right.
so I think leaning on the data. And we know historically what happens when data meets emotion. Data loses usually. That's a hard reality to swallow sometimes, but I don't know necessarily. The data has to play a role. Maybe we're thinking about what, in addition to the data, is the story that's being told. But the data is, I think, an important part of it.
Well, I mean, that chart tells a lot.
Yeah, and actually, when we look at the next,
That one, yeah. Right.
so this is the current class size, and it's broken down more or less by the class size guidelines. So this shows current reality, right? You can see both in the K4 average class size and in the 5-6, Robinson is currently a fair bit lower than any other elementary school. And then we look at overall across the school, pretty tight in the other three, and then kind of the outlier right now is Robinson's. The projection going forward. So this now accounts for that one classroom reduction that we can take advantage of with the attrition that just occurred. Even with that change, Robinson is still a fair bit lower on average class size than any other school.
Well, I mean, I think maybe Kristen and I should do some sort of special outreach.
Sure.
At Robinson, or whatever. Sometime soon.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you can see, so we did not, we weren't able to take advantage of the attrition at Mount Abe. There was another action item on the consent agenda around that tonight. So at this point, there isn't a staffing change at Mount Abe next year. So the changes are really driven by just the different numbers of students between what you see for our current and what's projected. So fairly insignificant changes in average class sizes there. And getting into the numbers. So this budget represents a decrease of almost $500,000 from our current year spending, which is a significant undertaking in terms of the total expenses. Because we have the decline in the long-term weighted average daily membership, even though we're reducing our year-over-year spending, our cost per pupil is still increasing by 2%. And so what shows up on the ballot is this much money, $34,894,000, doesn't compare that to the prior year. It's just that big number, which represents a cost per pupil that is $14,628, which is $300 more than the prior year, which is 2% more than the prior year. So that's what shows up on the ballot. It doesn't show that we've cut $1.5 million to achieve that. It doesn't say that your tax rates are going down. It says, here's a big number and your cost per pupil is going up.
What was the cost per pupil increase for fiscal year 25? Right, 15.5, 14.3.
Right, yeah, we have
There's
to,
a shift of.
well, but that's not an
Yeah,
apples
it's
to
not
apples.
really fair because they shifted how they calculated your long-term weighted from equalized pupil, right?
Yeah,
So.
I can get that for you. I'd have to dig into last year's presentation and,
Do we anticipate significant pushback from putting a 2% increase on the ballot?
personally, I mean, you all have your perspective as well. Personally, I don't think 2% is a big scary number. Relative to, I mean, when people are thinking about inflation, like it's lower than any inflationary figure they're going to see anywhere. So if somebody's looking at some index somewhere to use as a barometer, it looks favorable to that.
Right?
But it doesn't tell the story.
It doesn't translate to your tax rate.
Exactly.
At least not.
And I think the concern is, when the narrative is shifting now with Governor Scott saying he's going to use one-time money and bite on the tax rate. There's obviously no specifics to that yet, but the narrative up until today has been 6% tax rate increase. And so when people are going to the polls, and we saw this last year, right? Last year's narrative was 15, 16%, whatever that number was. That wasn't true for any town in our district. And people went to the polls with 16% tax rate increase in their head because that's the narrative at the state level. And unless they're tuning into our presentations, there's nothing else anywhere that they're going to see that says that's not true for you. So that's always been a struggle, but a 6% tax rate increase narrative, which is changing, and seeing a 2% increase in the cost per pupil, I think is some reason to be concerned. Whether or not it's enough to have the scales tip toward the no, I wouldn't think so, but stranger things have happened. But for me, I think the messaging, I mean, you talked about the Starksboro messaging, but I think the message of like, we are all doing the hard work to have a financially responsible budget that is, so up as far as I know at this point in time, up and down the Champlain Valley, we are the only school district decreasing spending from current year to next year. So that big district that was in that presentation that you saw of 35,000 kids, we're the only one within that right now that is decreasing year-over-year spending. So there's such a case to be made that the hard work is being done to address what we heard from our community about affordability, while maintaining high quality programming. There isn't a program lost as a result. That should be celebrated with, that should be sung from a mountaintop. Only the people in this room are going to do that. There's nothing else. There's like, there isn't anything statutorily that they're going to see on a ballot or in a warning that's going to say that.
Flyer could say that.
Yeah.
Flyer has to
Just where we have to say that.
And I think
It's a lot
too,
to say that.
I think too, it might be worth us creating some sort of like really bulletized, here's what your budget is doing for you, and put it out maybe in Front Porch Forum and the AD&D to just sort of get it out on top of what we already do for mailings and presentations. And it might elicit more questions, but it might be really worth just highlighting some of the things we just talked about. Before March.
I love that idea.
So let's dig a little bit more into what that does. So you can see pre-CLA, it's still showing an increase. And again, remember that the whole shift in the tax calculation was to shift it away from the CLA being the impact and driving it to the sort of cost per pupil and the yield. So this is all before that. And so it makes sense that that's going to be an increase. But in the end, this is really what we're looking at in terms of tax rates. It's a decrease across the board from 0.5% to 9.25%. And probably getting better. And who knows by how much. When we put that into dollars, anywhere from about a $6 decrease per 100,000 of assessed to about $120 decrease per 100,000 of assessed. And remember, Moncton and Starksboro have both reappraised. So that will be on homes that have more hundreds of thousands that they've been assessed at versus Bristol and New Haven, which have not had their reappraisal yet. And then for the 2/3 of folks that pay based on income, using the median, which again, there's sort of a scale, right? Not everybody will feel the impact this way, but this uses the median income, the most recent median income. They will see a decrease as well. So we now have an audited fund balance of $819,990. My recommendation is to put that fund balance into the capital reserve. And there'll be a conversation about a recommendation from the finance and facilities later that puts that into some additional context that may be helpful.
Is that something we're adopting as part of the action item?
I was just thinking that, so this, yeah, this assumes there isn't fund balance used to offset taxes. So that's basically this board with this 819 or about $820,000. This board has a couple of options, and if you don't exercise those options, the money defaults to what becomes a third option. So you can put this money into either the capital reserve account or the education reserve account, or any combination of the two. And anything that doesn't go into one of those two accounts defaults to offsetting the tax rate. Having done the hard work to have a budget that already shows a decrease in the tax rate for every town, that's going to actually only get to be even greater of a decrease. I don't think it warrants putting that money to reduce the tax rate. And as we talked about before, if you put that money, any dollar that you put toward reducing the tax rate this year that you don't sustain next time around is a loss of revenue that you have to make up for by increasing the budget or decreasing spending. So it digs a hole for you that you have to kind of find your way out of. So it has a negative long-term effect if you go that route. So for all those reasons, I would recommend not putting any to offset taxes. We don't have any sort of significant anticipated expenditures from the education reserve. We now know from the Truex report, we have significant facilities needs that we need to be able to build a plan around to address. And we can spend all of that 820 and multiple times that to take care of those facilities needs. In the context of the governor's plan, what makes sense and where and how, that there's a whole different thinking that needs to be done around it, but nevertheless, until further notice, we still know our buildings need work. Does it make sense to hear from the finance and facilities around the context around that and then come back for this motion? Because I think it's important. Yeah,
I think that's right.
I will stop sharing and let you do that.
Oh, great. Good thing I'm prepared. So as part of our thanks, Kevin.
You're on, Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
We love you, Mike.
So as part of our finance facilities meeting a couple of weeks ago, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this fund balance and about district needs. And it really felt like there was a confluence of events. One was having this substantial fund balance. The other is a sort of dire need for a pretty large capital project, which would be replacing the roof here at Mount Abe. Something that we've known as a district for a while is necessary, but haven't gotten to. And then the third factor that was really important to consider was with the change in funding and formulas that we'd be taxed on any funds that have been in the capital reserve for 5 or more years. And we want to avoid that because that's just an unnecessary tax on funds. And so what we ultimately did as a committee is we had a motion and we recommended the following, and then I can give you a little background as to how that came about. But our recommendation was from the Finance and Facility Subcommittee to take the full carryover fund, the fund balance that Patrick just alluded to, and move that into the capital reserves. While also authorizing a drawdown from the current capital reserves to help pay for the roof. On some ways, this might feel a little goofy, like a little bit of a shell game, like why are we putting money in just to take it out? Again, the rationale there was to avoid this new tax on basically rainy day funds that you really should have so that you can deal with construction and maintenance needs within the district, but now that are limited in time to this 5-year window. So by moving the money in and taking the money out, we can avoid that tax. We can have the funds necessary to move forward with the roofing project. And we can sort of maintain a capital reserve fund balance that should position us well-ish. I don't want to overstate it, but better than if we didn't put the money back in to address some really long-term and some pressing capital improvements that the Truex Collins report laid out. That's like the bird's eye view.
And to give like some numbers to that.
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
In the financial report on the bottom where Floyd lays out, so our capital fund reserve right now is 1.7 million. The net of putting the 820 in and taking the 1,041 out was 220,000. So that would leave us with a capital reserve balance of 1.5 million. I'm hoping he's checking me back there, but did that pretty quickly.
That sounds about right, yeah.
So
Round
just to give
numbers,
you
yeah.
context of what that does to the reserve.
Yeah, so we end up decreasing the reserve a little bit from where we are at present. But we walk away with most of a roof, essentially budgeted for. And then when you account for funds that we typically put in for construction anyways, you get to the rest of the roof ideally. I think the other thing that's worth context setting wise is if we think about this move, in the context of the budget that Patrick just presented, the fact that we had thought about adding back in that $400,000 to the construction line that had been in there 2 years ago, that we pulled from a little bit last year to try and help us get over the finish line, and that we're pulling from again, you know, those are gonna add up. And so to not address capital needs by adding the fund balance to the capital reserve fund, coupling that with not funding our capital year over year, may put the district in a really bad spot for addressing some of those facility needs going forward.
And layering on all of that, right? Construction costs are going up faster than most other things are going up, right? So the relative cost of addressing the needs that are present in the Truax report is gonna get harder and harder to accomplish every year that they're further off down the road, so. Dollars spent today are wise dollars, so the more we can get done today, in the longer run, it's gonna save taxpayers money.
Boy, I'm sorry, did you say that was 1.5 left?
1.5 left after we put in and take out.
Yeah.
And that's what Article 11 is referring to on the ballot, right?
Yes. Boyd, how much of the capital reserve this year would hit that 5-year mark?
240,000 is already there. For the next fiscal year, it will go up by another 800,000. The total between the two is 1,040,000. As of next year's budget, will all be in the 5-year season, and will add to our ed spending number in terms of whether or not we come up against the threshold.
Which is why you see that 1,040,000 as the number, which seems like
Right,
kind of an
so
odd number, but that's.
it's about pulling it out, putting it in, and really just starting the clock again for 5 years.
The other thing we discussed was the fact that we keep kicking the can on the road here. We're only gonna be able to do that.
It's gonna kick back pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple.
I guess the point I was trying to make about Article 11 is that when we vote on the budget tonight, and Patrick made the recommendation that we use those funds for the capital reserve, we still need that to be voted on separately, right? Yes.
If only the electric could put money in or take money out of the capital reserve. And only if the electric can put money into an ed reserve and the board has authority to take money out.
Just out of curiosity, have we ever put it on, I just don't know, remember, sorry. Have we ever put it on the ballot that we would use these funds to offset taxes?
Before I came, that was common practice.
Okay.
It hasn't been common since I came because of the challenge that it creates in that next fiscal year.
I was just asking in regards to precedent setting.
Yeah.
Not wanting to do that.
Yep, and that's part of, so it was part of trying to not position us, you know, negatively for future budgets, and in response to what was declining facilities conditions, the sort of two-pronged approach of we need to really increase the money we have in our construction services. Like, so with multiple failed bond attempts, you know, I mean, it's true today, right? The smart money is get a bond and pay. I mean, when we first tried, it was pay the 2% interest rate to not pay the 5 to 7% escalation cost in construction. Like, the bond is the smart money, probably still true today. In the absence of being able to get a bond forward, plan B couldn't be do nothing because the buildings were deteriorating. So we added a considerable amount of money. This was when it was, we were not a unified district. So it was just the Mount Abraham Union High School district that added $1 million to their budget that we've been able to grow a little bit over time. And so it's both that combination of adding money to the budget and using reserves to address facilities needs. It's been able to get us what we've been able to do.
And I was just gonna say, I mean, indirectly, we kind of are putting that option on the table, right? Obviously, it's pitched to the electorate as, if you say yes, this money would go into the capital reserves. But if they say no, right, the community says no, then that's essentially a yes vote. they're offsetting taxes.
Mhm.
Right, so in the end, it lays in the community's hands
Sure.
to make that decision, so we're not taking that decision away from them. But I think that by pitching it in this way, we're able to make perhaps the board's preference clear as to what we think is the better course of action in the long run for the district. So yeah, how that pans out.
Right. I just wanted to be clear considering, talking to stakeholders and people in New Haven, I mean, that is a concern, is taxes all the time. It helps me have some more context to talk about what we have done thus far, what has worked, what doesn't work, and where the money will be inevitably going. So.
Is there a way to calculate, probably, I look at you financial people, is there a way to calculate how much each taxpayer in this district would receive if that $819,990 was returned to offset tax? How would you calculate that? I mean, it's minuscule,
It's like
but.
$20, I was thinking, I was already thinking that, but we're not talking about a lot of money.
I think about $275,000 in spending equates to 1% on the tax rate, give or take, I think is what we've kind of worked with.
A little north of quarter.
65.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I mean, I know that to some people that's a, trip to the grocery store, but it's not a lot of money.
And the difference really, I think in order to really quantify the impact, so that's the tax impact of not putting the money into the facility and instead using it to buy down the tax rate. Unless the plan is, we don't intend to ever do anything to fix the buildings, you have to account for, well, what's the cost of not doing it this year and instead doing it 1 year later? So that project that was $100,000 is now $107,000. And so what does that escalation do to your future tax rate? And that then gives you sort of the difference.
And
Exactly.
You said 1%.
275,000, 1% of tax rate. I think
it's important to remember that we have a $305,000 hole from last year with the ed reserve that we put in to offset taxes, right? So we are up 1% just to fill our hole that we created last year. It is without doubt kicking the problem down the road when we're already showing no tax increase. So the bang for the buck is to create a much bigger hole next year when we don't know what that future may hold, given the dynamic movings in Montpelier.
I think even with the movements in Montpelier, that MAUSD was certainly located in a centralized area for our towns. So I think that is probably important in the grand scheme. Also, one thing that I found a little compelling was that even though it looks complicated to put money in and take money out, there's value in the community aspect of being able to vote on that coming in and out. So I think that's a unique opportunity to be really involved in what decisions are being made about what's getting worked on. And I think my last question is the electrical. And so I'm excited, okay, like we're gonna do something about the roof. That's feels really good. I hope that we choose to do that. And then I wonder how the electrical ties into that, because that was another big ticket, invisible, important code safety thing. And I wonder if that some of that is being thought about in the estimate for the roof, if that has anything to do with it other than solar panels.
They'd be separate projects, and it would be and even the solar panels themselves would be separate from the roof project. We would be probably, I think it's wise to put the roof on and make sure that structurally it could hold solar panels, if that's a decision that is made to happen down the road.
Yeah.
But outside of structurally making sure it can hold solar panels themselves would be a separate project, as with the electrical upgrade. Because we're not really coming down below the ceiling. It's really everything on top of the roof that we'd be talking about in this project.
Okay.
We know we need to upgrade the electrical, but we're not worried about it blowing across the field.
Oh, that's good.
I think we, we spent a lot of time in the facilities and, finance committee talking about, the perceptions of, the facilities needs, in the district. And I think I'm right in characterizing our conversation is that we're concerned that the sort of voting, public doesn't really appreciate how bad the roof situation is. And I think the sense was that it'd be important for us, again, from the messaging standpoint, to make sure people know that roof could go tomorrow with disastrous, consequences, as a way to, garner support for doing obviously the complicated, moving money in and out of funds and funding a quote unquote a facilities budget. But I think it's real important to, because we said at the meeting to keep it as simple as possible in communicating with with parents and taxpayers. This roof it could fall in, any day. Because I don't think, I don't.
Leak and it'll blow off.
Right, I don't, well,
It's
yeah.
not gonna crush the students.
I just don't think that's appreciated in the community at this point. And it's our job, I think, to communicate that.
Yeah, I would just say that I agree with you very much so, and I would just say that was a downfall in the merger conversations, right? Was that they're feeling, because it was on the news of all the flaws of Mount Abe, like when we were going for the bonds, so there was this wide perception that we don't care for or take care of our schools when we have great facilities and we have people that take really good care of them. So it's just, that's the only thing about it, but I know it's the right thing to do is to say, hey, these are the problems and this is why we need to address it. It's just a little nerve-wracking. Highlight this thing and have it be, and so then we just need to make sure we also get it on the news if it makes it there to like, look at our beautiful new roof and how like wonderful this is and the good things that we worked on and fixed. So to finish the story, right, as much as messaging before, messaging after.
What was the life expectancy of this roof? We've surpassed it already.
I don't remember exactly what it was, 30,
It was a
could be more than
30-year
that, but I think 30, yeah.
roofs on this roof.
I think more than that. I think it's the original roof when the building was built, right? I think we put a new roof on.
Well, because there was a new roof on this building.
So that was 60, 69,
68.
68, yeah.
A piece of few years.
So that's, okay. That's an important, really important message.
Yeah.
If we can stretch your own roof at home by 5 or 6 years, not by 10 or 15,
It's not the most fun and exciting way to spend a couple $1 million, but I don't think anybody can argue about the importance of having a solid roof over your head.
So does that sort of answer the questions about the fund balance and how that plays into our motion on the table is to adopt fiscal year 26 budget? Are you feeling ready to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting the fiscal year 26 budget, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
Thumbs going up there, Barbara.
Nice.
The next action is to authorize finance and facilities to finalize and distribute the budget flyer. Can I have a motion, please?
So
Meredith,
second.
second Kathy, any discussion about the flyer? Any ideas or
That's
things
the
we need?
thing.
Well,
to-
we talked about the sequencing and how it's gonna happen. Based on the last couple of years, it's been somewhat unsatisfactory process to get the flyer from this meeting to the, out the door to the post office.
What would make it more satisfying?
Well, I think we tried to do something, between meetings. I don't remember the exact
Did we write down dates?
Well, part of the challenge, right, is, you know, if the full, so I think historically this full board has acted on the flyer. So there's been a draft presented, kind of kicked around here and then finalized to get out the door. And some of it was the sequencing of the meetings, right? If
Yeah.
this board doesn't meet again until February 18th, and if that's the first time you're gonna see a draft of the flyer.
Right.
To finalize it and get it out the door ahead of town meeting day, that's a tricky timeline. But I think giving it to the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee, there may be a little bit more of a nimble sort of action that can be taken there to, you know, get a draft between now and the next Finance and Facilities meeting to approve and then have a window to get it out. I think was part of the strategy there.
Sounds like a good
Does-
strategy.
Does the full board need to approve the flyer or?
I think this action grants the authority to, like, it makes it very clear, this board is giving that subcommittee the authority to
Okay.
make it and get it out the door.
People don't see it before.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't
But
send it
I
to
just like to
everybody.
see,
Yeah.
be able to talk about it with.
No, we can schedule town meetings like we did.
Yeah.
And we could call a special, I mean, if this board wanted to have that approval, we could call a special meeting between the next Finance and Facilities and the next full board. Specifically for that item. You can see it, you can talk about it, make whatever changes you want to finalize and get it out. It's really mostly just about whatever we do, let's make sure we get it out in time for people to have in their hands to mull it over before they show up on town meeting.
I think what we had talked about was, because we have to be cognizant of open meeting laws as well,
Yeah.
sort of me sharing the information with you sort of individually. You could give me feedback as individuals so that we wouldn't be communicating as a group.
Right.
Right? And so essentially, like, I would be making changes and then each of you individually could say, oh, maybe you should think about this, or maybe you should think about this. And so in that way, whether you were part of the Facilities and Finance Committee or not, like, you could still see and give feedback. And then we'd ultimately be able to come up with a final document that reflected what we want as a board, but also that didn't like overstep our bounds and have discussion outside of a public venue. Does that make
Understood.
sense?
And I think what would be helpful, maybe like we give between this Tuesday and next, and I'm gonna volunteer you, because you kind of just volunteered yourself. You'll about something that you would like to see on the flyer, right? You're not on Finance and Facilities, but you're like, I really think we should put this on it. Maybe just shoot Mike an email
That's
so he
great.
can take that into account as he's building that first draft, because it's just one less round of iterations.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that, you know, any kind of communication that goes out to, you know, to the board individually, maybe just make it clear what your deadline is.
Yeah.
I need to hear back from you by this date, because it needs,
Right.
because that.
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I
we
mean,
just need
Patrick, you and
to,
I can sort of sit down and think about what that timeline should look
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
because I think sooner than later is really important.
Do you think
Yeah.
you can get out next week, which is the first week in February? Is that possible?
Because we'll have to account for, there's about a 1 week turnaround, maybe a week and a half from when it gets sent to the printers. And then the printers print it, put the stamp on it and get it in the mail. So that all happens there, but it takes about a week or a week and a half.
So it has to go out next week. We can't push it beyond that
Well, I think working backward from when do we want this in the hands of the electorate?
as soon as they can get it.
You're basically as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so
then-
then it's,
So then are we looking at doing, you know, we have our annual meeting, right? We have the school board's annual meeting. But are we looking at doing anything in our individual towns as well?
Yeah, we hadn't really discussed holding individual meetings. What we've done in the past is just had one meeting. It sounds like, Starkville, you're interested though in doing something in your town, which are, you know, it's totally cool. I don't know if other people are feeling like that would be helpful in their town.
I think it would be, I mean, it helped us last time.
and if it's not a quorum, then it's an informational session. It doesn't have to,
Right.
you know, that gives you some latitude.
Yeah.
But we'd still want to be advertising so people know and all that, but.
What is the difference between an informational session and a quorum?
So a quorum really is the, you know, the 50% plus one of the school board are in attendance. So that makes it a quorum. So it's an official body at that point. Anything less than a quorum and it's not. And then informational session, meaning there's no action taken. It's really just about sharing information, which also carries a little bit of a lighter threshold for sort of certain requirements. But if you're taking action, then that requires a little higher degree of warning and, you know, public notice. And minutes, and if for an informational session, there's no requirement for minutes. but for a board session that you're taking action, minutes are required.
So what we did last year was each town reached out to their town administrators, and sort of coordinated with them about spaces that they can meet in. I think we used some school buildings to hold meetings. So as long as that sounds like something you want to do, let's just coordinate it, pick a date that works for you and your individual town. And then we can push it out through Front Porch Forum. We could probably list all the dates if every town was feeling like we wanted to do that. Yeah, the only, I'm feeling fine, trying to squeeze one in somewhere. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Barb or Justin about Moncton.
Yeah, we haven't talked, but I think it went well last year.
Yeah. Okay. Barb, do you have any sense of whether or not you'd be interested in doing that informational session like we did last year?
Yeah, I'd be happy to help out with that.
Okay. So why don't you and Kylie coordinate dates, and loop Justin in to figure out dates and times, and then just reach out if you need a space and we need to use Moncton Central School. We can coordinate that through Patrick.
I'm starting an email to the admin team now, just giving me a heads up that folks may be reaching out to coordinate times. If you reach out to admin assistant, so probably the folks to include building principal, admin assistant, and myself, as you reach out, looking for a time to schedule, just so we're all looped in.
And Meredith, we're doing what next week? Are we doing, we're doing something else?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I just don't even remember the day. Fifth or the sixth?
Thursday, I think it's the sixth.
Okay.
Admin assistant, principal, and me. If you send an email to that group.
We're doing the virtual session with a link that works.
Perfect, right, but so we're gonna do a sort of a broad overview of how the current budget, how we go from a current budget to now the newly adopted budget. So there's gonna be an opportunity on the sixth of next week, a virtual roundtable, so that would be open to anybody around. So that would be a nice broad informational meeting, so it may make sense, given the timing of the flyer certainly not being out by then, to think after that. So you sort of have like, next week, there's a big generic one for anybody who's like really excited to learn at the beginning at the ground level. And then we'd have the following week or something on that time level, these sort of individual town meetings, plus the flyer coming out. So there'd be lots of steps for people to be engaged.
That's what I was thinking too. When's the warning?
So we have the rest of this week to get the warning and the ballot out. So we're at the end of the window in which we have to get that out legally to be ready for a town meeting day.
And this is probably a silly question, but when do we vote?
March 4th.
Okay.
So I just
The first or
want
second one?
The first Tuesday.
I just want to come back to the action item that's currently on the table.
Yes.
Which is to authorize finance and facilities to finalize and distribute budget flyer, because we're starting to get into some other things that are in the agenda. So let's vote on this. All those in favor of authorizing finance and facilities to distribute, make and distribute a budget flyer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We'll do it now.
Just
Thank
a little bit
you.
of both.
And I think we should coordinate too, so I can make that bulletized version of stuff to put on Front Porch Forum and.
Yes, and that'll
Yeah.
mirror the
Exactly.
flyer. Yeah,
Exactly.
happy to do that.
Our next action item is to approve the warning. Can I please get a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
Meredith first, Kristen second. Discussion, please.
So the one thing I'll point out, this connects back to an earlier conversation. There is a motion on here or an article on here to put money in the capital reserve, which is clear now based on the way you acted with the budget, but also to take that 1,040,000 out. So by approving this, you're authorizing pulling that money out. Well, you're authorizing asking the voters if it's okay to pull that money out.
Right. Any questions or concerns? All
Well,
those,
just the concern that we raised earlier, that it just doesn't tell the full story.
right,
Yeah.
well, I think
And
with
that's
what we're.
that's
yeah,
a structural.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. I think with everything we're putting in place, that should be, hopefully we can tell the story we wanted. All those in favor of approving the warning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next is an action item to approve the ballot. Can I please have a motion?
So moved.
Kathy? Second. Melissa, second. Discussion, please.
Same as the one.
They're pretty well linked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can do really anything here anyways, so.
Yep. If you don't approve this, we have some work to do on the one you just approved.
All those in favor of approving the ballot, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next, we have an action item to approve and authorize the board chair, board chair to sign the financial management questionnaire. And in the chair notes, I sort of gave you a little brief overview of what that is, but Floyd's here, so he can sort of walk us through that if you have more questions. So first, can I get a motion?
So
Melissa first,
second.
Kylie second, discussion, please. About what it is or what it does or why we have it? No. Okay. All those in favor of approving and authorized board chair to sign the financial management questionnaire, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Next, we have an action item to remove a policy E6 capitalization of assets. And this will be removed from a required policy and become an administrative procedure. So first, can I get a motion? Mike?
I'll second it.
Sarah, second. So discussion, so, we go through all of our, policies all the time, and the school, VSBA, or sometimes other laws come into effect that change what would be a required policy. And because we're a policy and governance board, we're not in the habit of adopting non-required policies. We try to just limit ourselves to what's required. Anything else goes into an administrative procedure, which falls under the jurisdiction of the superintendent. So that is what this action item does. It just recognizes that that policy is no longer required, but we're keeping it. It's just moving to an administrative procedure.
Answer the question about the policy. Sure. Not necessarily removing it, but obviously this is an old draft, because we're trying to remove it, so it's been there for a while. So just curious, Floyd, on the bottom of the second page, it talks about how the individual component has to be over $10,000, and the second bullet talks about unless it's federally grant funded. Have you all updated that to the $10,000 limit since it updated on 10/1/24?
We have not officially done, it. We've talked about it internally and haven't moved that to the 10,000. Tammy and I were going back and forth today on that. We will.
I just figured since everything else is 10,000, usually you say at 5 if you're more conservative on everything else. So I was just curious if you all had made the move.
No, that will move.
And this, the movement of this from policy to procedure has been sort of in the hopper for months to maybe even a couple of years.
Yeah.
In the Policy and Governance Committee. So it's sort of been known that this is the direction it should go.
Mhm.
So investing the time and this, obviously that change was just recent in October, but investing the time into a policy that's not going to be a policy anymore that we can accomplish when it becomes procedure. Didn't make sense either.
Yeah, it's much easier to change a procedure than policy. Yeah. Any other questions about this? All those in favor of the removal of policy E6 to move it to an administrative procedure, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. Next, we have an action item to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 policies for posting. Can I please get a motion? So moved. Meredith, second. Kristen, discussion. You guys have, I don't know if you've all reviewed these, but I hope you have. They're pretty straightforward policies, but basically the procedure is policy and governance. gets the model policy from VSBA, updates the policy, gives it to our admin team for review. Admin team does the review, says A-OK, gives it back to us, and then we give it to you to look at and say, yep, that looks fine. If it doesn't look fine, or you don't agree with something, let me know, we can pull it out of here. But otherwise, these are just the VSBA model policy language with our title on it, essentially.
A lot of them say date and effect, so they've been posted before, so we're just like reviewing.
So they get updated. Yeah,
making
so
sure they're-
Jennifer will put the updated dates in when they're posted.
And this is the first time that you'll be seeing them, right? So this is approved for posting. So basically it's letting everybody know, hey, we're looking at making these policy changes. And then in the next business meeting, you would adopt them and that's when they're final. And then we put them on the website and do all that work.
So how do we know what I'm sorry, how do we know what the changes are? Am I lost?
No, we don't do like track changes, I guess. We just sort of adopt it in there. Good question, though. That's a good thought for going forward to sort of demonstrate what's been changed. I'm sorry to tell you, I don't think I can go backward and do that.
Okay.
At this moment.
I just didn't know if I was missing something.
No, you're not.
I was
Might be
confused.
Like compare the.
The old
original.
policy.
Yeah, I think
to this
we're-
one.
You have to sort of do
Yeah.
it side by side.
I think Word will
Crosswalk, yeah.
automatically do that for you.
Oh,
It'll
okay. Never
compare
done
two
that.
documents and
If you
then
wanted
show
to.
you which ones are different.
But I
Do
think
we have
next
like a
going,
policy management program?
no, it's us.
Google Docs.
Track the changes for you. You can see them.
Well, I think what we can do is sort of archive as we go along and then we'll be able to pull out the changes that way. But that's a really good point. Thank you I didn't think about that.
We could have when you can track changes in Google Docs.
Yeah.
So there's a way we could.
Well,
we
we
could
could
hold
also just highlight, you know,
When we-
because
Like
a lot
they're in red
of
font.
these are just, oh, the VSBA tweaked the language,
Yeah.
and we haven't looked at this in a while. That we could almost provide you a couple of bullets
Sure.
that are pretty simple, unless there's a complicated one, and then we could show you. But a lot of the edits we're making are highlights and crossouts.
Yep.
Who's very.
And links to other things, like updated links.
Exactly, but we can give you the highlight.
Totally. Yeah, I will say in this list, the only policy that's significantly different is policy C9, which is the nutrition policy. That was totally, like, pretty much totally rewritten and comes with a lot of extra rules and regulations and teams that we need to build and things like that. So out of all this list, C9 is really is a beefy one that's been changed. But the rest of them were really kind of small.
And so are you saying that anytime we're voting on these, we're really only ever voting on them because the changes are from the SBA and not from within our administration?
Right, so the policies themselves will change when VSBA updates them, or there's some recommended changes to their model policy. That's what we tend to adopt. The procedures on how these policies are carried out are created by our admin team, and you can find those on our website too. Those can change as admin sort of sees fit, and they sort of bring it to the policy and governance team to just say, you know, here's how we're meeting this policy through our procedure. So those can change a lot faster than the policies. We don't typically do that because of there's a lot of inherent danger in playing with language when it's vetted through lawyers and stuff like that, right? So we just typically don't do that.
I'm thinking that the mandatory changes versus the ones that are optional by the VSBA, the mandatory ones are usually coming from some sort of law that's changed at the state or federal level, right?
Yeah. So a lot of them, like, we have some procedures that are for HIPAA or for other things like that, and so there's a law and we have a procedure for it. We don't necessarily need a policy for it, right? That would be one of those things.
It's a good point, because if they're about the changes and seeing what, because I was
Yeah,
thinking
the
like the
track
last time,
Yeah.
there were some
Mhm.
things that like we asked and then, yes.
So, yeah, we can do better at that, though. That is a good point. So I made a note to do track changes so that we can show you all what we're doing.
That would be more transparent too.
Because we tend to do it right there in the meeting and walk through, do the change.
with the SBA stuff in there. It's quite the spreadsheet and matrix.
Yeah.
with- It's really impressive. I see these on here and I get all excited now. I'm like, oh, yeah, they made it there.
Right. It's happening, it's really happening.
Steve would be proud.
He would be
Yeah.
very proud. So we got 7 tonight, Steve.
They're all color coded and stuff.
Okay.
Bottle of champagne.
Any other questions about these policies or why we're?
I'm looking at C9, I remember coming upon this before when goal number 2 for physical education and physical activity. The district shall offer opportunities for students in grades K through 12 to participate in at least 30 minutes of physical activity within or outside of the school day. How is that enforceable? And outside of the school day, it's none of our business, it's not in our purview. I mean, unless we're now saying that every one of our schools has to offer another opportunity for students to participate in physical activity.
But we do, right? We do that through sports and
Not-
things like that, so it is always on the table.
It's offered.
It's offered. We don't enforce it, we can't make them do it.
No, but it's in this board, so just big long breaks.
So every single day, this is what it's saying, that every school day that we will ensure that there's some offer of physical activity outside of the school day. It's a huge-
Or,
No.
or
Or.
might be the keyword, yeah.
Within or
But again, how do we do that outside? That's not.
It's about
We
the
do our
opportunity, right?
best.
So,
So it's probably more crucial at the older levels when you don't have gym every day,
recess.
right, or recess, like once you lose that in junior high.
and even then specifically between athletics seasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the fact that we offer athletics creates the opportunity that a student could pursue. They choose not to, then they choose not to, but, so it's really those,
That basketball court, maybe
But
it's just the existence of areas in which to exercise.
right, so it's then, I mean, elementary school is pretty clean, right? So between PE and scheduled recess, that's pretty solid with the 30 minutes a day for all children. It really is at the secondary level, and even middle school gets sort of a body break in the middle of the day, so even middle school is quite tight, I would say. It's at the secondary level for kids that aren't playing sports and aren't signed up for PE, and it's in between sports seasons. Like that window for those kids that are not in PE class is the challenge.
But they're not in PE class every day.
Right, but it's really, it's just, yeah, so it's every other, so it's still a little bit shy of that. It's tough, I mean, that's one piece of C9,
Right.
there are many other
Oh,
pieces that
there's a
are
lot
that big and
here.
bigger. It is,
A lot.
it's one of the most daunting policies we have.
Sure.
It's hard for me to wrap my head around. How do we comply with that? And not have to add resources to do so? And what will it cost to add the resources to make that happen?
And that's just one small part. There's other parts about
Mhm.
nutrition teams and wellness teams, so it's a big thing. But we'll be looking forward to the procedure.
Yeah.
When it comes out.
Other duties as assigned.
Can't wait. Welcome. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, all those in favor of approving those 7 policies for posting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Our next action item is a sabbatical leave request. Need a motion, please. Yeah, Mike, thank you. All right, so, Mike and Patrick and myself met a few times to discuss this request. Before we jump into, I don't know if you want to jump into it, you're sort of more like aware of.
Yeah, I guess I can give a little bit of context. So a request came late last year in June that was really verbatim, the same request. Was quite a while past the September, November, I forget exactly.
December 5th.
The deadline for making the
November 1st and
request.
December 5th.
Yeah. And so it was June, I think, when it came in, so it really couldn't go anywhere. So that request came again this year. still past the deadline, but not quite as sort of far past the deadline. And that's sort of what prompted my reaching out to Aaron and Mike, given that was past the deadline, just trying to say, like, we're in a position to say it won't make it to the board because we're past the deadline, or we can be flexible and bring it to the board, and ultimately, Aaron and Mike really thought bringing it to the board was warranted. So you have it here. Other than that context, I think it effectively spells out what the request is. I also shared, or maybe linked, I think maybe linked in the agenda, the language for sabbatical. And so if you say yes to a sabbatical, those are the conditions you're saying yes to. So there is a financial obligation to the district. So the request here is for a half a year. So in that circumstance, the board would pay the full salary for the employee salary and benefits for the year, for that half year, for the sabbatical.
I think there are two issues. One is whether, since the deadline was passed, or was not met, does that kick it out?
Right.
And the second issue is whether we want to assume the financial obligation under the 8.1, Article 8.
Yep.
So my first question on the first one is, the fact that it was a month late, does that prejudice the school, the district in any way?
I mean, it could be seen as precedent setting. Like, so if somebody is late in the future, then a case could be made that we would need to honor that request that came in late. Interestingly enough, we have two requests on this one that both came in late, one much later than the other, but both late. So we've set two different precedents, I guess, in doing so. So which one gets more attention in the future is hard to know. But
Was there a reason?
Was there a
why it was late? Because I mean, she's trying to sort of organize something in a foreign country, and I don't know whether the
there may be, but there's
process.
nothing I'm aware of that led to it being late. I did mention when in the initial request that it was late, and that may be a factor, but I'd bring it to the chair and vice chair for consideration and see where it goes from there. And that didn't prompt a sort of message back as to the reason why.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that there wasn't a reason.
So, I'm seeing in her, so first of all, like, I'm under the philosophy that, I don't know how to phrase this. I'm so sorry for, I should have given myself a minute, but I think it's phenomenal that we have a teacher in our district that has put this before us, that is thinking about education on a global scale. And I think Finland's a great place to go to. And I really have to commend her for even putting this option out there in the first place. Just seeing the wording, it is my intention to secure living accommodations, knowing how difficult it is to do that. Like, what happens if she isn't able to secure her accommodations? Does the sabbatical still happen? Like, what's the process for that?
She did, and maybe that context isn't in this. She has reached out to, so again, she did some work last year to set this up, to make the request, albeit in June. In a communication she sent to me, it did say, I've reached back out to those same people to see if this is still open and they're agreeable to it. So there's some work that has been done to make arrangements for this to happen.
Could we consider the June request, the request for this year? And it's not like she just came to us in December. We knew that she was trying to organize this last year, presumably for sometime in the future. So.
I'm biased. I know Anne, and I'm also very familiar with Finnish education. I studied there myself, so this is really interesting to me. But I like your idea of, can we take that as, the notice that she'd be asking for this?
Yeah, the only difference in the request, the request that came in June of last year was specifically for this school year, and this request is specifically for next school year. So we'd be making a sort of a connection to the two, and that is a reasonable connection to make, but.
I like that thinking, and I just imagine that a part of the timing importance is really on filling the position. And on reading the CBA, would be assigned to the same position if such position is available. If it's not available, you can be placed in a substantially equivalent position. So we do have that protection, which makes me think that there might be beneficial in terms of looking for a replacement for that position, right? Because the leave requires flexibility and placement upon return.
So we'd be looking for a long-term sub for the second half of next year.
So I know that that's a really hard thing to do.
Can be.
I think there's sort of, I think there's sort of like two other considerations we had. One was the timing. I am not feeling like the June of last year to December of this year connection is strong enough for me, even though I understand that there's a connection. The guidelines are pretty clear about when to submit stuff. We've never granted a sabbatical in the district. That's another consideration to make, is that other sabbaticals have been denied.
Is there some reason for that?
Patrick has more context around that, but it was.
This is only the second one in my time here that's come to the board. You know, people have the tires on sabbaticals, but never really kind of gone all the way to board action except for one other prior to this. And they're two very different circumstances. So I think each one is, you know, seen fairly independent, just because of the unique nature that comes along with a sabbatical. It's not as routine in K-12 public ed as it might be in higher ed, and just you know, it's a different kind of circumstance. And then, you know, another part, and it speaks to this in the sabbatical language, is the financial context in, you know, the particular year of the request. And that was something that I wrestled with, right? You know, we just cut $1.5 million. And this is a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 expense to the district to support this. So just kind of wrestling with that reality. I think it's something.
Go ahead. So I just want to clarify. So sabbaticals have been requested, but the district has not approved them, or they generally have not been requested?
There's been one request prior to this, and that was denied.
It was denied. Okay. How
And that
long
was 7 years ago?
ago? 7.
Ballparking, 6 or 7.
For me,
What's the primary reason?
That one was a different request for a leave to assist their own kid through something. So it was a different set of circumstances. Yeah.
so, maybe not as much surprise. The timing doesn't bother me on a personal level as much, but I'm not very good with rules, so there's probably not a lot of weight in that. So take that for what that's worth. The thing for me is this 8.7 in the contract. Approval of the request for sabbatical shall be based on the merits of the proposal and the economic condition of the school district. And for me, that's where I was a little bit hesitant here. Well, I've no doubt that the sort of Finnish education system has some really great ideas. I would think I would want to set precedent of a pretty high bar for how thought out both the experience and also the perceived outcomes of the experience will be, both for the individual who's going, but then also for the district itself. And so in this particular request, right, you know, it ends with, although it remains to be seen exactly how this new learning will enhance my instruction or translate to improved outcomes for MAUSD students, I believe the potential is great, and I don't doubt that. But I would think that when we're gonna perhaps outlay, you know, half of a teacher's salary, half of a position in such a tight budget, that we'd really want to set a precedent for why that investment is so valuable for that individual and the district. Right, and so here, for example, like pointing to Finland as having this great education system is all well and good. But I don't know, you know, I don't have an argument here for what this particular school might be able to bring. And how does it relate to the rest of education in Finland? Or how does an experience of shadowing a teacher or talking to a couple of teachers, how would that be vastly better than reading published literature about Finnish education, right? there is value to seeing things in, first person in hand. But I really want to have that articulated in a way that I knew, yes, this is why we as a district should support this, because it's something that this person couldn't get any other way. And these are the things that we really directly anticipate coming back to the school. So for me, that would feel like a good bar to set. And I say that all with the sort of back of my mind thinking, I would love to support these opportunities in general for our professional staff. Because I think that there really can be a lot of value to them and to the district. I would just want to be really convinced before saying yes, if that makes sense.
Mike, I'm gonna just call on Barb, because she's been patient, and then we can come back.
Thank you. I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Mike. I don't have the teacher contract in front of me, but I was wondering, what does a teacher guarantee back to the district after that experience? Would it be a couple of years of service? Would it include in-service training for other teachers? What would we expect back? And I do have to add, I am a little concerned about the tardiness of the request. So, thank you.
It's 3 years.
I say it's written in there, I don't remember if it's 3 or 4,
It's
but yeah.
3 years.
So that's, I think the only commitment is that they remain teaching here for 3 years, unless obviously we take action for them to not be here. But if they were to leave, then there'd be some sort of a reimbursement.
I'm not saying that I disagree with anything that's been said, because I agree 100%. There's concern about the fact that this was submitted late, concern about the fact that the benefits to the district haven't been articulated. But one additional consideration that I'm thinking about is teacher retention and how challenging it's been nationwide to recruit and retain top talent. And maybe signaling that we're open to hearing requests for sabbaticals is something that could signal to our educators that we're willing to invest in their personal development.
I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, I think, I'm with you, Mike, on the timing. I think that's de minimis. We should make a decision based on that. I worry about the second part of your argument, Mike, though, that it strikes me as disappointing that we've only had one previous request for a sabbatical. In the context of a board, at least over the last 5 years, has very consistently supported professional development among our staff. I get the fact that the rigor that the system has imposed on making a request for a sabbatical isn't really probably where it should be. But it's kind of late to use that as a reason necessarily to deny someone's request. I could certainly see moving forward, if we want to encourage, as you said, more sabbaticals among our staff, that we maybe, I don't know, one of the committees might look at what kind of a process would serve the district better, in the sense of making an experience like this beneficial not only to the professional staff person, but also to the district as a whole. I personally think that $20,000 or $30,000 to fund this sabbatical is not a great price to pay for 3 years of someone coming back into our community with an international experience. I don't think that you can get an international, a full and meaningful international experience by reading books. And I think, so I would very much support this person's request for sabbatical.
And just for context, the range of what the cost would be is a little hard to pin down, because it depends on, because we're talking about more than 90 days, we would be hiring somebody and placing them on. So if we're hiring a long-term sub that has to be a licensed educator, but it's less than 90 days, we pay them at the base rate of pay on the teacher scale. But when it's more than 90 days, we place them on as if they're a new hire. So if we get somebody that's veteran and they're on the top end of the pay scale and they're eligible for benefits and they take a family plan, like,
Might
so
be
that
more than that.
it could be
more.
maybe even double that. Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
I don't know if this is a reasonable question, but, given what has become the volatility of building budgets, is there any way we can change that timing of when that application is due? Like, we start building our budget early, and that December 5th deadline seems, it's too late. We're already way down the line in building our budgets. So I think it's fair and realistic to say, hey, if this is something that you're looking into to possibly pursue, get this to us in September so that we can build this into what we're looking into, what we're looking at. Because we warned our budget tonight.
Yeah.
So the timing is really unfortunate, but I think for future purposes, because you make a really good point, Brad, and that in you as well, Meredith, that we really want to, it would be able to foster these kinds of, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but these are really awesome opportunities, but I think the timing is really crucial. And it's no mystery to any educator that these are challenging times. So
when I look at the dates that are in the language so there is a way to change it, I guess, is the answer to your question, and that the way is through negotiations, because this is part of the collective bargaining agreement. When I look at the dates so November 1st is the date by which the employee needs to make the superintendent aware. And then the date by which the board would need to take action is March 15th. Those are intentional, right? So if we know by November 1st, we're early enough in the budget building process that if the board is leaning toward, yes, this should happen, then we can account for that in the budget. But the board is not locked into it till after town meeting day when do we think our budget passed or not? Because if the budget didn't pass and you're gonna have to go in and look to make reductions, you may think differently about the cost of supporting a sabbatical. So I think there's a strategy in these dates that connects to your concern about budgeting.
Barb?
I'm just wondering if we could maybe approve it, not for this year, but for the next year.
We don't know if that's an option before.
Yeah.
I would suggest that the board is in favor of allowing the exploration of sabbaticals, that the board moves forward with asking the superintendent to add that to the budget, right? And let's just put it in. So if it's something that as a group that we feel the community will support, you're gonna be the slings and arrows when we cut some position and send someone on a sabbatical at some point in the future, right? But if it's a good idea and defensible and added to the budget, then that's proactive in thinking forward. So the funds are in there. As opposed to tonight, we're having a conversation about the funds. As opposed to the merits of this sabbatical. And they're two opposite items.
I think it would be hard for the board tonight to act on a sabbatical for not next year, but the year after, because part of your consideration in this is what's the context in that particular budget cycle that you're approving this in, and we don't know what that is at this point in time.
Thanks.
So I think you could approve it for next year, or you could say, for whatever reason, we don't feel like next year is the right timing. But if you bring it to us in time next year, we'll give it serious consideration for the subsequent year. And don't forget, for this board to write a check that a future board that may have a different representation has to cash is complicated as well.
Good point.
Liz?
So it sounds like, am I understanding correctly, that kind of the sum total between paying for the person's salary and benefits, because benefits continue, and paying for a replacement a long-term sub is?
30 to 60 is probably a decent range. Depending on who the long-term sub is that we get and benefits and all that.
Have you spoke with it's Beaman, right?
Mhm.
The Beaman principal and talked about the potential impact they anticipate if it were approved, do you have their thoughts on it?
No, but I think the implications are pretty straightforward in terms of, you'd have a group of students that would have one teacher for the first half and a different teacher for the second half, and that has implications. And then the concern of what's the availability and quality of folks that would be available for a half a year assignment in the spring. And it's hard to know, so like that could be great, and it could be really hard. If it's really hard, that's a big problem.
That's what I was gonna say, is
Yeah.
there a possibility of you can't hire someone?
There's always that possibility, and we have bumped up against that for stretches of time. We haven't had to go a whole half year, I don't think, with, someone in sort of an emergency situation. But several weeks for sure we have, and it's a problem.
Maybe transitioning, working with who we have. And some of the attrition. Yeah, I don't know. This is really hard. I think it's really exciting. And I think it is well known that the educational experience that she would be exposed to over there, it's just feels almost like general knowledge that that's a really successful style of education. But there's also unique challenges that exist over there that I don't think we would want to have here, right? So it's kind of like a give take, right? And so the alternative here is if we say no, the person can still go. Right, I mean, so I understand that that's not the ideal situation because you need to support yourself during your time on spec.
But, and it's not entirely true. So I think, ultimately, yes, in order for that to happen, the person would either need to not sign their contract of employment with us for next year, in which case they get to go and do whatever they want. But if they sign a contract to be employed for the year next year, they're legally bound to that contract for the year. So they can't walk away mid-year and then come back afterwards. So there are complications to make that happen. That said, an alternative approach to this is an unpaid discretionary leave request for the second half of the year. So we wouldn't be paying them their salary and benefits while they're gone. We would have to pay somebody to come in and replace them. So we have some of the same challenges, but not all of the costs.
I just really wish that this was received by the deadline. Like, I'm the opposite. I'm like so goals focused. It gives me pause that this application was not submitted by the deadline. And for something as complicated as moving and teaching abroad and then bring all of that knowledge back here. And it puts us in a position where we're talking about this now instead of in November or December, where we might have been able to move things around more than we have the ability to do so now.
Ironically, and this has been true for our last couple of budget cycles, for many years prior, it wasn't as true, but in November, December, we were talking about how many RIFs were we gonna have.
Yeah, very true.
And now we're talking about no RIFs and tax rate decreases. So the context has shifted a lot. I don't know what the conversation would have been like right?
I just have to say, one thing that I'm sure you all are thinking, and, in times where money is tight, it sometimes is beneficial to look at, right, like bolstering what you have. And not cutting back or maybe even expanding in the area of, teacher, I'm sorry, I'm losing the words here, the depth, professional development, thank you. So that's all. I am a big believer in training and in people getting more education. And so I feel like, it sounds like a lot of money, but could we get more bang for our buck with bolstering what we have internally? And like I said earlier, this is like a passion of mine, is, looking at alternative ways in which to educate children in a public school system. And so anyway, sorry.
It's okay, sorry, I fully agree with that. And I think at a minimum after this, either way this goes, we have to, as a board, establish what it means to review based on merit.
That's where I'm stuck.
Because I'm not seeing how we're fulfilling that role. We have a broad sense from this of like, there's something happening there. You're talking about a public education system. This is an international school. It's not even like a Finnish public school, right? It follows the Finnish model, it says, in the elementary school, but it has an international baccalaureate model in the middle and high school. I mean, there's an international baccalaureate at Middlebury, right? So it is dissimilar and similar, and there could be incredible value. I don't discount that. I just don't know how we, as a board, or at least I as an individual, can actually assess the merit of this proposal. Now, that said, I could be persuaded that we haven't really fulfilled our role as the board in terms of giving enough guidance to be able to elicit sabbatical proposals that would be interpretable, that you could assess merit.
Sure.
And if we haven't done that, then is that a fair standard to hold someone? Like, maybe this particular case is one that sets us up so that we say, okay, there's enough merit we think here, but what we're gonna do going forward is we're gonna establish procedures or guidelines for what we think you have to prove to the board as merit for us to be able to consider what is a financial cost, but also a potential benefit. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's analogous to the conversation we had about, your evaluation, Patrick, setting the right expectations. It's setting the right, benchmarks and evaluate criteria. I mean, I see this as an opportunity for us and, to, maybe make a star out of one of our teachers.
Yeah.
For the benefit of the district.
Well, I also, no, I mean, when I look at it, this is 2 years in a row, she missed the deadline. If it was that important, you wouldn't make the same faux pas the second year, especially you're a teacher, you're a leader. And this is a really big issue. It's not just so, I'm gonna be gone for 3 weeks, you're gone for half a year, and what that means, especially in today's classrooms, is huge. So why would you do that 2 years in a row? And I agree, I absolutely agree. There's gotta be some kind of rubrics to demonstrate to us what the outcome is. I mean, I had that benefit of being able to go to Italy and study a long time. But in order for me to do that, I had to demonstrate what I was going to then commute to the school system I was working in. And I was held accountable for that. So I guess I would move the question at this point. We spend a lot of time, there's a lot of great dialogue here, but I would need a question.
Well, that's what I'm gonna do. Is I was gonna take a straw poll to see where people were today.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Before we do that, sorry. If we were to grant it, can we grant it with conditions that there will be some expectations or deliverables?
I don't know how we.
Agreed
do
on
that.
before.
That's sort of already outlined.
Yeah,
so in
the conditions
Yeah.
are negotiated, so that gets hard to,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah, this
And
is
it's
what,
3 years you have to work here.
So
what you saw linked here is
Yeah.
verbatim pulled from the negotiated agreement, so.
this is a negotiations year.
Yep.
But we
Perfect
didn't,
time to do
if we didn't add it to our list of issues, then
We're a little late in the process.
probably not gonna be added now. So thumbs up if you do want to grant the request. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I feel like we need to negotiate this in the future, though.
Thumbs up.
I would agree.
Barb, did you have a thumb up for yes? No. Okay, so there are 4 thumbs for yes. Thumb up if you do not want to grant the request.
Do not.
Do not want to.
Yeah.
If you're abstaining, you can't.
Is there 12? Do we have 4, 4, and
We
4?
have 4 and 4. And then you didn't vote.
Can I help if I abstain?
Because I'm not a strong yes, I guess I'll have to go no.
Same, I agree with Melissa.
Okay. So we're gonna move to deny the request then, and when we send a response to this teacher, we could put a request in for things like meeting the deadline and adding a little bit more context or
I think we should make a commitment to
Yeah.
outlining,
Having-
outlining how we are going to evaluate the merit of these proposals
Mhm.
in a publicly facing way,
Yes.
so that she and any other professional
Yep.
staff who's covered by this agreement could apply for this, meet the deadline, know what the sort of criteria of evaluation will be. And given the largely positive or at least mixed reaction tonight, it wouldn't surprise me that if she were to put something in like this again next year, meeting those conditions and being able to speak to that this could be favorably viewed. I don't want to speak for the whole board, but certainly from my own perspective,
Yeah.
I could see very shifting my own feeling on a kind of proposal like this. And that saves us the problem of granting one now as a precedent and then trying to change the benchmarks and then having the next group of people say, but so-and-so got to do this. Like, we could set this up really well for the future and hopefully support.
Is it inappropriate to ask for like a presentation or, you know, I mean, that's really what would, I mean, be helpful.
I think that's what needs to come out of this sort of sabbatical procedure, application process, evaluation
Okay.
process, right, figuring that out. is
So
what-
that we can speak to why we would approve something
Exactly.
like that and what we're hoping to get back as.
So I'm gonna move this forward for,
Well, I was
unless you,
just gonna say, so since what bucket does that fall into to do that work? Is that?
it's a great question. I'm gonna bring it up to Patrick.
Okay.
You wrote it down.
That one right there. It's in the book.
Sounds good.
All right. All those in favor of not approving the sabbatical leave request? Correct, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just want to double check and I see the
What'd you do? What did I
furrowed
do?
brow. We don't actually have a motion that,
Oh, do we need to?
approve this about it.
So who made them, who made that?
Meredith and
seconded
by Mike.
Can you make a friendly amendment?
Or you can just say all in favor and nobody raises their hand.
Okay, all in favor of the, okay, yes.
What are we doing?
So I'm gonna say all in favor of approving the request and everyone say no.
and it's not everyone,
Whoever
votes, right? Yeah, but just to clarify for the minutes, can you read what you have for the motion in the minutes so people
To
know?
approve the sabbatical request for guidelines per the CPA and for as referred to on the agenda.
So
Yeah.
if the motion fails, then
And it doesn't go.
the clarity is that the request was denied.
Has there been a vote on the motion?
No, we're gonna vote
We were just clarifying the motion that it was, yeah.
to make sure that yeses and nos were correct.
Right, so all those in favor of approving the sabbatical leave request, please say aye.
Aye.
So three. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. 3, 4, 5, 6. Barb?
I hope I'm hearing properly. So that's an opposition?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm with the opposition. I
Yeah,
think.
so. Yeah,
So, sorry, 3 in favor, how many?
7 against. Any abstentions? No. Okay, so the motion fails.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next is an update from negotiations. Do you have anything?
We continue to negotiate. There'll be a joint statement that will come out shortly. It's very brief and sort of broad. But I would say that there's been really good dialogue, there's been some movement, and we just keep meeting and moving towards hopefully a nice mutual agreement.
But we haven't gotten to the big issues yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you save the juicy ones for
The juicy
later.
ones are coming, exactly. But made progress on the steps there,
Steps to get there.
I would say.
And then we did sort of the update of finance and facilities, but was there anything else?
We just talked about the community engagement event that'll now be, this rescheduled for next week and sort of how we present that. And I have some ways of sort of visualizing expenses that we'll present there that I hope are, we got some feedback, which is really nice, that I think are hopefully clear and concise to capture how we spend in the district, and kind of where those levers might be. So that's all that discussion was.
For policy and governance, well, you sort of saw what we've been working on today. But we also have some other policies coming up that'll be changing in July. One of them is a process that has to do with school libraries. So VSB is working on a model policy right now for that. Some schools already have a policy about how books are brought in or how parents can advocate for some books to be present or other books not to be present. So that's some of the language that's gonna be in this. And that will be effective July 1. Also effective July 1 will be a requirement for a superintendent evaluation. Which I was under the impression it was required because we engage in that, but I guess that's another thing that's coming up that'll be due July 1, which we already do, so I'm not too concerned about doing that. Otherwise, we're just continuing to move policies into admin review and make sure that all the procedures are up to date that are attached to those.
Thanks for doing that.
And then community engagement.
We have been busy on the community engagement committee. We're shifting focus away from the budget and towards future planning for the district and how we can engage all stakeholders across all of our communities to have a voice in what we want the future of our district to look like. So we have a virtual roundtable planned for February 6th that we could really use your help with marketing. So when the invitation is posted on Front Porch Forum and on Facebook, I would love if you could all repost it, get people to join. I think this is a great time to have our community stakeholders understand more deeply how our budgets are made. We are also planning an event in April where all of us, this is new, so I guess I'll launch it now. We are planning an event in April where we'll have everyone on the board go out to local elementary schools to talk with each community about what's important to them. As we look at the future of MAUSD, more information on that to come, but just for awareness, that's something that we're looking at. I feel like a lot has happened on our committee in a short amount of time.
Okay.
The February 6th, was this on Zooms? It's a roundtable?
Yes.
On Zoom, okay.
Virtual roundtable.
And how the budget was built. And
Thank you for asking.
Erin, just one clarification about material selection. We do have quite an extensive procedure right now, which does include a reconsideration clause.
Right.
So how the VSBA decides to model their policy as a requirement, and if it will replace any of that or not, this is still. But I just want to back up, sorry.
Thank you.
And Kathy, I actually have the invitation for the February 6th roundtables. What I'll do is I'll just email the invitation to the whole board after this meeting, and if you could just post it on your socials, that would be much appreciated.
Just so all of you know, Kathy, Kristen, and myself and Barb run the Front Porch Forums for the towns. So when your committees have something or whatever, if you want that posted on Front Porch Forum, you can email me to disseminate, or you could just know it's Barb, Kristen, myself, and Kathy who post those.
well, I think we talked about this last year, and we said for social media posts that will all come to you
Yep.
first, and you
Yeah.
would,
Send it to you.
as the board chair, would dispatch it to us.
And just remember, there are two components here. One is sort of advertising that the event's happening, and the other is warning an event that is of a subcommittee of the board that's gonna have a forum.
Yeah.
So that Jennifer can help with the official warning of it, so that that box is checked. And then you can
Information.
do anything beyond that to let people know this event's happening, go check it out.
We have warned it with the correct statement.
It's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna move into public comment. Any public comment? Yeah, Sarah, hi.
Hi, thank you. And this is my public comment right now is unrelated to my earlier one, different topic. I wanted to remind the board of the importance of our district taking a big picture look at safety systems and how we're responding to safety crises. I don't have any immediate concern with building level responses. But I want to, the district was to take a look, I thought that our, sorry, I'm having trouble putting words together at this hour. The district committee, I'm spacing on the advisory committee, there it is. The district advisory committee, I thought, was going to look at results of that small group suggestion. The small group had made suggestions on safety. And then it kind of got subsumed by the Up for Learning initiative, which is important, I know. But I want to just remind everyone, let's not put safety practices on the back burner because issues remain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other public comment? I don't see any. Okay. So we have two executives. The first one is executive session T1 BSA 5313A7, which is an academic records for suspension or discipline of students. And for that one, we'd invite in Aaron Brenton and Patrick, and do we need and Katrina to that first executive. So could I please get a motion? Meredith and Kathy seconds. All those in favor of entering executive session 1 at 8:42, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Executive session under T1 BSA 5313A1F, and that's confidential attorney-client communications. This does require us to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. So that's motion 1, is finding that anything we're discussing in this would put us at a disadvantage. So can I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Kathy?
Second.
Meredith? All those in favor of finding that this requires the premature general public knowledge would place us in a disadvantage, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, second, entering executive session 2 at 9:14 PM. Can I get a motion? Is that, who's first? Melissa, thank you.
That's very long.
And Kylie, yeah. Okay, we will enter executive at 9:14. We need to invite in Dina and Patrick and Beth
And Katrina.
and Katrina. Wow, you did all of them. I get two.